Breaking news, the Telegraph have just come out with another huge BBC bias bombshell one day before the BBC's deadline to respond to Donald Trump's $1 billion lawsuit threat. They have discovered that the BBC also doctored that Donald Trump speech on Newsnight back in 2022, 2 years before the Panorama documentary that we have all been talking about. So the BBC did this not once but twice. And get this, when that BBC Newsnight clip was aired where they clearly doctored Trump's speech, Trump's chief of staff was on BBC Newsnight and absolutely berated them for it, tried to talk to them about it again the following day, and his concerns were shut down. So the BBC knew that there were concerns and there was clearly an issue here, and they did nothing and then repeated the mistake 2 years later. Let's take a look at this Telegraph article with this huge news story. This throws a big spanner in the works for the BBC right before that deadline tomorrow for them to respond to Donald Trump. They are really going to be on the back foot now. So it says, like Panorama, the Newsnight edit made it look as if the US president had urged supporters to walk to the Capitol with him to fight like hell. And a former White House chief of staff criticized the BBC on air for splicing the footage, but his concerns were ignored by Kirsty Walk, the Newsnight presenter. Let's take a look at exactly what was said in their edit of this. So it's slightly different to the Panorama edit. The Panorama edit was a little bit worse. The Newsnight edit says we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you aren't going to have a country anymore, making it sound like he's trying to incite riots and violence at the Capitol. The slight difference with the Panorama edit is that the Panorama edit just says we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we fight like hell. So there's a little bit extra in there, but still, this is splicing together two parts of his speech that are 54 minutes apart, completely changes what he said. Very misleading, and this is what the former White House chief of staff to Donald Trump said on that Newsnight program in response to that. He said, your video actually spliced together the presentation. He said, we're going to go down and we're going to cheer on our senators and House members, and then it actually goes on to say, and some of them we might not be able to, and that line about and fight like hell is actually later in the speech, yet your video makes it look like those two came together. And then he goes after the BBC for not getting their facts right. He said, that's the type of messaging here that so many people in my country find frustrating, is that it's hard to actually get the facts. If we're going to have a debate about what this was and prevent it from happening again, I think part of that is to make sure we're straightforward in our presentation of what actually happened. Boom. Well said. And then we hear that actually he brought this up again the next day. So a whistleblower has told the Telegraph's Daily Tea podcast that a further discussion the following day was shut down. As I said, this is a really big spanner in the works. The day before that deadline, it's going to be 10 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, that a response has to be given. Else, it's $1 billion lawsuit. Get ready, BBC. This is crazy. And this has some complications for Jonathan Monroe, potentially. So Jonathan Monroe is the guy who has just been promoted after Tim Davie and Deborah Turnus had to resign over the Panorama edit. So he's now taking Deborah Turnus's place as CEO of News. But actually, get this, he was the man that was in charge of Newsnight at the time that this Newsnight edit of Donald Trump's speech went up in 2022. So he is now in trouble as well. We could see another resignation. They've just replaced Deborah Turnus and they might have to replace her replacement already. It says here in the Telegraph, at the time of broadcast, Mr. Monroe was interim director of news and current affairs with ultimate responsibility for Newsnight. Now, Caroline Leavitt was asked at the White House in the briefing room by GB News about the lawsuit. Let's see what she had to say.
However, he has always been very frank when he disagrees with leaders, even whom he has a good relationship with. And the BBC, being a fair news organization, is definitely an outlet. I think these two leaders would disagree. The president has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain. And I think that the president was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news. And he rightfully dubbed that term many years ago, and this is a classic example of that. We see it in the United States all the time. We see it now in the United Kingdom. As you know, the president's external legal counsel has filed a lawsuit against the BBC. We expect that to continue. And whether they apologize
They're not
or
backing
not is up to
down.
them.
So there we go. They are not backing down at all. They expect this lawsuit to go ahead. The BBC, they better come up with a good apology and take down any inappropriate content about Donald Trump that is inaccurate fast. Else they are facing a huge lawsuit. But what we're hearing is that the BBC, they've got their head in the sand. They think they can win this. They think that they can win this. They think that this is some sort of far-right coup to take down the BBC and they've done nothing wrong and there's no institutional bias. Honestly, idiots if they think they can win this. Absolute idiots. They are clearly biased. Anyway, that is the latest in the scandal. Of course, we're going to find out tomorrow evening whether or not this lawsuit is going to go ahead or not, what the BBC responds with at that deadline. So make sure you hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't already, because we will keep you up to date with everything that is going on. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.